750 million genetically modified mosquitoes were approved for release in the Florida Keys. They weren't released all at once, and almost none of them could bite you. Beneath the blazing Florida sun, between narrow canals, quiet neighborhoods, and humid mangrove forests, thousands of small release boxes sat almost unnoticed, as one of the most closely watched biological experiments in American history quietly began. By the end of this video, you'll know what actually happened after the headlines faded and why the real story is far stranger than most people were told. This wasn't simply an experiment with mosquitoes. It was a test of whether humanity could genetically engineer an entire wild population without permanently changing nature itself. By the end of this video, you will know exactly why Oxitec created the OX504 mosquito, what the Florida Keys trials from 2021 through 2024 actually proved, and what scientists are planning to do next if regulators give them permission. For decades, one mosquito caused an outsized problem. Aedes aegypti accounts for only a small fraction of mosquitoes in Florida, yet it spreads diseases including dengue, Zika, yellow fever, and chikungunya. Traditional insecticides were becoming less effective as resistance increased. Every year, mosquito control districts spend millions of dollars spraying neighborhoods, placing traps, and monitoring outbreaks. Yet the species kept returning. Scientists faced an uncomfortable question. What if killing mosquitoes wasn't enough? That question eventually reached a biotechnology company called Oxitec. Founded in the United Kingdom, Oxitec spent more than 15 years developing genetically engineered mosquitoes designed not to eliminate every mosquito but to suppress one invasive species. Earlier versions had already been tested in Brazil, the Cayman Islands, and Panama with varying levels of success. But the United States remained unconvinced. The challenge wasn't only scientific. It was political, environmental, and deeply emotional. Residents feared genetically modified insects escaping into ecosystems. Environmental groups warned about unforeseen consequences. Supporters argued that the mosquitoes being targeted already weren't native to Florida and carried dangerous diseases. The debate only intensified as federal regulators prepared to decide. In May 2020, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency granted Oxitec an experimental use permit for its second-generation mosquito, OX5034. The plan covered thousands of acres across Monroe County in the Florida Keys, with releases beginning in 2021. Later, the permit was extended through April 2024 after regulators reviewed early safety data and reported no observed adverse effects from the field trials. But one enormous question remained. How could releasing millions of mosquitoes possibly reduce mosquito numbers instead of increasing them? Most people believe the project meant scientists were filling Florida with genetically modified insects that would reproduce forever. That wasn't how OX5034 worked. Only genetically engineered male mosquitoes were released. Male mosquitoes do not bite humans because they feed on nectar rather than blood. They carried what's known as a self-limiting genetic trait. When those males mated with wild female Aedes aegypti mosquitoes, nearly all female offspring inherited a gene preventing them from surviving to adulthood, while male offspring survived and carried the same trait into the next generation. Continued releases gradually reduced the local breeding population rather than replacing it permanently. Researchers from Oxitec worked alongside the Florida Keys Mosquito Control District, using hundreds of monitoring traps and thousands of collected eggs to measure exactly what happened in each released neighborhood. Then the first data arrived. The modified males dispersed through neighborhoods much like wild mosquitoes, successfully found mates, and researchers confirmed that female offspring carrying the engineered trait failed to survive under field conditions. The early assumptions were beginning to collapse. But one unexpected discovery wasn't about the mosquitoes at all. It was about what happened after the releases stopped. By 2022 and 2023, multiple pilot seasons had generated enough information to answer questions scientists had debated for years. Could engineered mosquitoes compete with wild males? Yes. Would the genetic traits spread indefinitely? Apparently not. Would the insects remain in the environment after releases ended? That answer surprised almost everyone. The project actually reduced local populations of aegypti. According to Oxitec and the Florida Keys Mosquito Control District, repeated releases demonstrated measurable suppression of the target mosquito population while confirming that the engineered males successfully found wild females under real-world conditions. The project also improved just-add water release boxes that required little maintenance in neighborhoods. But population reduction wasn't the biggest result. The engineered mosquitoes disappeared. After releases concluded, monitoring continued into 2024. Scientists documented that Oxitec mosquitoes vanished from the environment within the expected timeframe because the self-limiting genetic trait wasn't designed to establish a permanent population. That finding directly addressed one of the largest public concerns surrounding the project. Still, researchers weren't finished asking questions. The next phase isn't about releasing more genetically modified mosquitoes. During the 2024 season, no additional OX534 mosquitoes were released. Instead, researchers shifted toward studying how this technology could work alongside conventional mosquito control methods, while Oxitec pursued broader commercial approval from the EPA. Regulators must now decide whether years of field evidence justify expanding the technology beyond experimental trials. That changes the meaning of the entire experiment. The biggest lesson wasn't that humans can engineer mosquitoes. It was that biological control may become far more precise than blanket insecticide spraying. Instead of targeting thousands of insect species, scientists may eventually suppress only one dangerous mosquito while leaving most of the surrounding ecosystem largely untouched. That possibility reaches beyond Florida. As climate change expands mosquito habitats and diseases spread into new regions, the question becomes less about whether genetic tools exist and more about how carefully humanity chooses to use them. Because every generation inherits the decisions made by the one before it. Florida's genetically modified mosquito trial showed that engineered male mosquitoes could suppress invasive aegypti populations and then disappear after releases ended. But one question still has no final answer. If this technology is expanded across entire states or countries, how will evolving wild mosquito populations adapt over the next 10, 20, or even 50 years? Share your theory in the comments. Click the next video on your screen for another discovery that will leave you questioning everything.